Thanks for joining me here on Tropical Weather Impact. It is July the 2nd. We're here on your Wednesday. I am meteorologist Peyton Malone reporting to you from New Orleans. This is a view of our skyline from New Orleans, and you can see that we do still have that haze. This is still thanks to Saharan dust that's been with us the past few days across the Gulf Coast from Texas to Louisiana. Saw some reports out of Florida of the really hazy sky. Some people going, what's wrong with the sky? Well, it's just been Saharan dust over the past couple of days or so, and it is going to start to lose some of its steam here, and it will begin to dissipate in the coming days. Now, zooming out before we get into what's going on off the coast of Florida maybe later this week, look at this large plume of Saharan dust that just came off the continent of Africa. So we still have the dust going strong here in the month of July, and just a reminder, that is fairly normal. We don't really start to see the dust start to settle a lot until the August and September time frame. That's naturally when hurricane season really ramps up. So it's no coincidence that as the dust calms, usually our tropical systems begin to increase in coverage and intensity. Now here's what's going on across the tropics from the Pacific side to the Atlantic side. Right now, the only thing the Hurricane Center is still monitoring is that zone from Florida off the East Coast. Notice Flossie, it is now a Category 3, a major storm that is sitting south of Cabo San Lucas and Puerto Vallarta. Now, this is going to pass safely south of these communities, but it's close enough that, well, you're probably getting some rougher seas out that direction. And you can see here, this thing's really going to begin to dissipate in the coming days. I mean, we have this thing as a tropical storm by tomorrow afternoon, and then nothing really left as it moves into cooler waters in the next few days. So that's what's going on in the Pacific with the actual hurricane. Here's what's going on with what the National Hurricane Center is tracking out towards the Gulf and more so into the Atlantic. They're now giving it a 40% chance that it becomes a tropical depression here by the end of this week and into the upcoming holiday weekend. Now, if you've been watching, they have shifted the zone, a potential formation zone, to the east, more out into the Atlantic. So looking at a lot of our guidance here and a lot of our ensemble models that we run, they're really honing in that the best potential of some low pressure forming is likely going to be over in the Atlantic. Now, there is still a chance that we could get some low pressure forming in parts of the Gulf. And at the end of the day, you could have multiple areas of low pressure trying to form. It just shows you the kind of nature of this setup. It's very sloppy, it's messy, and that translates to mainly a rainmaker. So regardless of if this becomes Tropical Depression 3 or remains nothing but just a big blob of moisture and rain, it's going to be a rainmaker at the end of the day, especially for the peninsula of Florida here. Even if you're in Savannah, Charleston, or Wilmington, Wilmington, North Carolina, it looks like the bigger rain through the weekend is going to stay out here in the water. So when you look at satellite, you can see you've got a big burst of showers and storms north of the Bahamas. That's part of an upper level low. You've got another big burst of showers and storms over the northeast Gulf. All of this is just going to be tangled up together as we go through the weekend and low pressure trying to form. You've also got a weak cool front sitting in northern Georgia. That's sagging south. That's going to stall out in this region. So the front in conjunction with the upper level low is why we have that medium chance, we'll call it, of low pressure turning into a tropical depression. You can see the upper level low spinning in there. Some dry air, that's a limiting factor. You got a big old peninsula of Florida sticking down. That is a limiting factor too. So it's not in the perfect environment to become a named storm, and it certainly doesn't look like anything too significant like a hurricane right now. But again, you got to follow these things. Sometimes they can ramp up quickly, especially if they tap into the perfect environment. And sometimes they do ramp up into little named storms out in this part of the Atlantic Basin. So the thinking is still going to be for heaviest of the rain in this corridor. Notice off the coastal areas of the Carolinas, and then your bullseye is more so closer to the western peninsula of Florida. They are going to have rounds of showers and these tropical downpours moving through areas like Tampa and surrounding communities as we go through the end of this week. So if you have 4th of July plans here, there's a much higher chance of rain. Now, if you have 4th of July plans along the Panhandle or closer to home here in New Orleans where we're at, the chance of rain starts to become more isolated. Still some afternoon storms, but your widespread tropical rains are probably going to be more of a problem in this corridor here. Tampa, maybe all the way down towards the Fort Myers area. It also includes the potential for Orlando if you've got travel plans that way. So you can see as we put our precision cast in motion, this afternoon, heavy tropical downpours over Florida. Not much happening further to the west, just isolated showers here and there. You notice some rain from Jacksonville down the interstate there and down the eastern side of the Florida Peninsula. As we go into tonight, it's just the kind of up and down with the rain across the state of Florida there. This is tomorrow afternoon, large areas of showers. And then here's what we're going to watch with maybe that tropical depression trying to form. You can see, you start to see a lot more showers and storms out here in the eastern Atlantic in this elongated area. That's part of that old frontal boundary with that upper level low. And this is when you can start to get some low pressure tightening up and becoming maybe a depression. You know, if it reaches that 40-mile-per-hour winds and it checks a lot of other boxes, you can get a weak storm that forms from this. And so it's all in the realm of possibility. I just wouldn't say it's a guarantee right now. There's, once again, about that 40% chance. So it's a messy setup. And whenever you got an old frontal boundary, you're going to have multiple areas of low pressure trying to form. This is the GFS versus the European models. The European is in green. The GFS model is in red. So what you're seeing here, why you have these elongated areas, is these are little areas of spin developing along that old frontal boundary, and one or two of these may try to take over, and that's the potential for that weak tropical depression. You can see here Friday afternoon where all that is concentrated in the Atlantic. Maybe not much happening over here on the Gulf side of things. So that's why this little zone of potential formation has shifted slightly to the east over the past few days. Putting it in motion, you can see through the weekend, there's not a whole lot of movement in the atmosphere, so anything down here may try to drift closer and closer to the coastal areas there as we head towards the end of the weekend from Savannah to Charleston. That would just bring more and more tropical moisture, whereas if you're over here in New Orleans, we're still only dealing with we'll call it marginal tropical moisture in our area. And then as we head into next week, there could still be something out here just trying to lift north with all that tropical moisture. So again, this is not happening very quickly out in these areas. When you look at your forecasted wind gusts, you can see a pretty good breeze out here in the Atlantic as we go through the next few days. And then eventually, here we go, models locking into maybe some broad low pressure forming. If you can get showers and storms to form near the center of circulation, if there ever is one, that's your designation of either a tropical depression, or if the winds are 40 miles per hour or greater, then you can get one of those weak tropical storms. But again, a lot of models honing in on this general area for maybe some development towards your Friday, the 4th of July, and into the upcoming weekend. The water temperatures are plenty warm. Now, they are really warm out here in the Gulf here, where we're sitting in the upper 80s and mid 80s down here towards Florida. The eastern part of the Atlantic, or off the east coast here in the Atlantic, you do have the Gulf Stream, which sometimes this time of year, these little systems will try to tap into that, and that's where you will get your quick little depressions that spin up, or even tropical storms. So we do have the warm water temperatures to support this. I think a couple of the limiting factors, though, dry air, and the wind shear is not perfect, and this thing is going to be sloppy and broad in nature. So it kind of works against this thing trying to wrap up into anything too significant. Water temperatures, when you look at them, how they compare to average, they are running slightly above average, where we're going to be watching closely. They're running well above average, 5 to even nearly 6-7 degrees above normal on the extreme northern Gulf here. Out here is where you're running about 2 to 3 degrees above normal. That doesn't seem like much, but whenever you have warmer than normal water temperatures, that can aid in the development of systems. So there's all the deep tropical moisture. Fast forward this through your weekend, Saturday into Sunday. You can see some of it lifts up into coastal areas of the Carolinas. It's not until Sunday and Monday that we see some of that tropical moisture rebuilding along the coastal areas here in the New Orleans area. So again, this, is a marginal situation. It's not looking like anything too significant. Really just a rainmaker across parts of Florida as we go through the 4th of July holiday. I think the better shot of seeing tropical development right now is in the Atlantic portion of all of this. The eastern Gulf is looking less likely, but there is still an off chance that happens. Now, if this thing were to do something fancy here, and by Saturday, Sunday, tap into that Gulf Stream, it's possible you get a name storm out of these types of things, but it just does not look like a significant setup for anyone, really. So if you do have travel plans for the 4th of July, Florida is going to be the spot that they're dealing with rain, especially the peninsula of Florida. Here's the 4th of July forecast across the Gulf Coast, from Houston at 94, Lafayette 91, New Orleans, I'm forecasting 95 degrees. The only thing that could be a silver lining for New Orleans area for the 4th of July would be some drier air trying to work its way south. And that dry air would certainly be a welcome sight this time of year. That means your heat index only 100 in New Orleans on Friday. And I say only 100 because we've had many afternoons in the mid-90s where the heat index is 115 to even 120 on some of these hottest and muggiest of days. So we will take any break we can get from the humidity down here on the Gulf Coast. And even if you're traveling to Mobile, Gulf Shores, Pensacola, or the Florida Panhandle, it doesn't look like a complete washout for those weekend plans or for the Friday and weekend plans. I do think there's a better shot of you're going to be dodging a lot of rain across the Florida Peninsula here as that tropical moisture builds that way and continues to move off to the east. So I hope you have great plans for the 4th of July here. We'll keep you updated. That's going to do it for this episode of Tropical Weather Impact. We will see you right back here tomorrow with the latest update. Thanks for joining me.